Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Hanson Office of the Planning Board's meeting for November 13th, 2023. The meeting's taking place here at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to announce for all those in attendance that this meeting is being recorded for distribution and Women Hanson Community Access. Playback times and other related information on this recording can be found on WHCA.TV. Again, it's WHCA.TV. A couple of clerical things before we get started. Please, if you haven't signed in as a visitor on the sign-in sheet when you first walked in the room, please make sure that you sign in at some point. I'd ask that all participants or people that have attended tonight, please silence your cell phones as we get into tonight's meeting. First order of business for roll call for this evening, we have 4 board members present, as well as the town planning office in full. Mr. Ellis is not in attendance this evening. The first item of business on our agenda is to go over and approve October 23, 2023 public meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to take the agenda out of order and place those at the end. Motion made by Mr. Fenonato.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll place the minutes on to the end of the meeting. Before we hit our next 6:35 appointment, gentlemen, if you would like to prep, we have an upcoming public hearing for MBTA zoning district and draft related zoning. We'll take that here in a few minutes. With the agenda out of order, town planner, and we have a few minutes before the 6:35 public hearing. Do we have some invoices that we need to sign?
Yes, we did.
Hey, John.
You want to
Yeah, we have 2. One is for office supplies, and the other is for dentists to do a peer review for Meadowbrook.
Any questions from the board in regards to the invoice for $1,132 for the dentist to do peer review for Meadowbrook? Seeing none. Second invoice for this evening is $64.72. Any questions in regards to that for office supplies? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
The timing having arrived for 6:35 p.m. Recognizing we are going to open up our public hearing, update on proposed MBTA zoning district, and a draft of related zoning amendments as required under Section 3A of the Zoning Act. Town of Hanson is a commuter rail community, and as such must have a zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides for at least one district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted by right. Town planner.
So, as you're gonna tell, my voice is kind of going out.
Uh-oh.
I'll try to make this as long and as short as possible. As you're well aware, VHB is the company that we're working with on the MBTA regulations to get us over the line. I've been meeting with Luke Mitchell and Krista Magaha. I met with them on the 7th of November, and we met via Zoom call, and we were discussing some minor adjustments to the district itself, taking into account areas, frontage, and trying to determine what's the good lot size to make everything sort of work. I had, in essence, put pencil to paper to scale to kind of get an idea of what would sort of fit. So after speaking with them, they took the information and they made some adjustments. They're going to look at the numbers, make some adjustments to the district. It's still going to be pretty much the same size and the same location. It may have a capability of for a few more housing units.
Okay.
We were at 759, but making the adjustments, it gets to like 1,000. Again, these are potential. Doesn't mean that you'll make that number, but that's your floor that you have to meet for Hanson. They sent me an email today. They're in the process of creating district maps, and we're going to meet again on December 5th to go over what they've done and what I've done, and I'm continuing to input the information taken from the Excel spreadsheet for that district and create a section of the zoning bylaw for that district that'll address height of buildings, lot areas, parking, setbacks, etc., etc. So we continue to work on that. I'm hoping that we'll have something preliminary enough to maybe get them to come in on the meeting in December. We have one meeting in December, unless you want to meet on Christmas night, if anybody's interested. If not, I'm hoping to maybe get them in on the first meeting in December and have some kind of presentation as to what they've done up to this point and give you a better update.
Are we well within the timeline of compliance that the state had put out?
We have to be in complete compliance by the end of December of 2024.
2024, so we're well ahead of the game.
Yeah, so the whole idea is to,
That's a credit to Tony's work, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
what they'll do is they'll put things together. We'll sort of get everything put together and then we submit it to the state for their review. And if we meet all the criteria, then we can move on to hopefully for the May town meeting. It's better to do it that way than go to the May town meeting and then if you send it to the state and you miss something. So at least you get sort of, let's say, that preliminary blessing, go to May town meeting. That way, once you're done and you can just move it along. If something were to transpire, then at least we'd have October town meeting if we needed to make any adjustments.
Perfect.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, Mr. Kevin?
On these units, I think you said there was 1,000 of them, right?
Yeah.
So I know that under the current rules, 10% would be community housing or affordable housing, whichever way you choose to call it. Can we increase that number?
You can. You would do like an economic feasibility study.
Mhm.
I'm working on just with the 10% for now, because as you go above that, the state wants you to prove that you can actually make it all work. So we'll start with the 10%, and then we can always reevaluate and pursue more at a later date if we choose to.
Okay. I feel it's a priority in order for us to achieve our required 10%.
And just because it adds an extra layer of work that you need to do in the time limit, it makes it just that much tighter. And so the state, speak with the MHP, they suggested just go with the 10% and then you can come back and make adjustments to increase that.
So we can, later on, we can make a case.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody has any questions for the public, this is about establishing a zoning area. It's not at all about putting shovel in the ground or changing anybody's lots as they sit right now. It's just about establishing a zoning area that the state regulation has required of all MBTA communities. There's a big push in the state for transient housing in and around those areas, and that's why we've been engaged to put in this zoning, this MBTA zoning. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to continue the proposed MBTA zoning district to our next tentative meeting date.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Bernardo,
Second?
properly seconded by Mr. Cohen. Is there any questions in regards to that motion? All those in favor of continuing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 401. Moving on our agenda into our appointments section, we have a 6:40 interview and/or appointment of Mrs. Jane Durante to the Master Planning Steering Committee as a public member.
Mr. Durant, if you mind stepping up, if you want to have a seat. Mrs. Durante, Mrs. Durante came in to see me, and she's very interested in assisting in the Master Plan Steering Committee. And so I'll let her explain in her own words.
Hi, Mr. Durante, how are you?
Good, how are you?
It's been a long time, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. I used to work for you in the main office.
I knew you worked for me.
It's very nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Joe.
Absolutely. Back in '93 is when I graduated.
Yeah.
Sorry for going down memory lane, but it's very nice to see you. So you want to join on to the
Well,
meeting?
I must admit, I'm an advocate for senior citizens. And I really feel that we haven't done our due justice to them in this community. So I figured, when I saw this published in the Hanson Express, that they wanted two members of the community to bring in the community's thoughts about, whatever the planning meeting people are doing.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm interested. And I hope, if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Right.
I also volunteer at the senior center, so, and have been for the past 10 years anyways. So I have special feelings for them.
Okay. Any board members have any questions for Mr. Durante?
Well, that being said, I'd like to make a motion to accept this application.
Mr. Kemen has made a motion to accept Jane Durante's application to the Master Planning Steering Committee.
Second?
Motion's made and properly seconded. Any questions in regards to that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I am an absolute yes. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you.
It's
Nice
going to be
see
great to have you
too.
on board. So the members of the steering committee will be reaching out to you for scheduling, which will be Mr. Kemen, Mr. Cohen, and our representation from Conservation.
Hi.
Thank you for your time.
If you'd
Thanks
like,
for volunteering. So
if
nice
you'd
to
like
see
to
you.
have, if you'd like to stay, we're going to have information regarding the, master plan.
That's good.
Will these members have to swear in from?
No,
Yeah, they won't.
no, this is just a
So,
sub.
so date appointed term and appointed by, do you want us to fill it out, or is that gonna be still, Bessel? Town clerk?
Well, this would be till the end of June 2024, because that's when this has to be completed.
Sure.
Speaking with Rhiannon and from OCPC, this is just more like a sounding board,
Right,
so there's no need for a chair, vice chairman.
right.
Yeah, it's very informal.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we still wanna have Beth do the endorsement though on the?
Beth said she didn't have to. That form Beth gave to me, she said it doesn't have anything to do with her. So that was just for us.
I don't have any problem making a decision.
I'll probably file it with her just for a matter of procedure.
Six 45, we have an interview and/or appointment of Mr. Peter Butler to the Master Planning Steering Committee as a public member. Mr. Butler.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So I'm a new resident to Hanson, and I'm interested in participating more in the community. Had lived in Weymouth previously, on the South Shore and Easton as well. While living in Weymouth, I was a member of the Board of Health. Enjoyed being part of local government. I think it's important. And I think my background in project management and my education in public administration align well with the role for the committee member for the Master Plan Steering Committee. And I hope to bring some of those skills to work for the planning department as we work to draft the changes and updates to the town plan.
Great. Yeah, actually, it's nice to see how you have some community involvement here. That's wonderful for the town. Any questions from the board?
Move to accept his application.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Benonato to accept Mr. Butler's application to the Master Planning Steering Committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any questions in regards to that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the steering committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
Can I just point out, there's an opening on the Board of Health.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
That's an elected position, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think it's appointed until election time.
Oh, that's right, that's
Yeah.
right, it is, yeah.
So it's an appointed position until the next election. So if you're interested,
Yes.
I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you, John. I'll reach out.
Stay long enough, we'll be on 3 minutes.
We can't put that. We are out of order in regards to our agenda, so I'm going to take the 6:50 down to 6:48 and discuss investigation for the expansion of existing business zones and the flexible overlay zone. Town planner.
So at the last hearing, I had brought up to the board the potential of expanding existing business zones, not creating new ones, but just expansion of the existing business zones. And I know the board was sort of gonna mull it around and sleep on it and see if they had any thoughts on it. And because if it's something that the board is interested in doing, obviously there's zoning changes, map changes. If it's something that the board feels that warrants looking at or doing, I would pursue it. If the board feels that it's not something that's would be welcome, whether by the board or the town, then I would not pursue it and just move on to other things.
Do you mind bringing up the zoning map, Tony? Put up the business zone?
Yeah, give me 1 minute.
After last week's meeting, one of the comments that was made, that I think it rings true still today, is that I still think in our existing business areas, there are a lot of empty floor spaces. So I think myself, my own personal feeling on it is I think also with the potential of a property sale down at Main Street, which I think would bring significant floor space to the business district. I don't know if it's a matter of trying to reinforce or PR the spaces that are not filled right now. I would have to defer to Mr. Cohen's representation on the Economic Development Committee to ask, do you feel in that research through the Economic Development Committee that the space is not adequate enough right now?
So.
Have you heard that you need more?
Well, it's a well-known fact in the town of Hanson that we are always looking for more business space, be as comparable to other towns. We're very, very much lacking in business, commercial space. Um, but you do have a good point as far as some of the new developments that are taking place. We do have some more commercial space becoming available on Main Street.
I also see down in the industrial park, there's always a sign up saying that there's open space.
There is, yeah.
So,
There is. In regards to that open space in the industrial park, I'm not sure if there really is. You know, I think that sign's been up for quite some time and hasn't been updated in regards to that one specifically. However, in the pursuit of always growing, you know, having that higher commercial tax base that we see in other towns that we're striving for, I can see us, you know, possibly expanding some of the commercial areas of town. I think I brought up at the last meeting, we do have some properties that bisect two zones. And if we were looking to create these business commercial zones, expand them, so to speak, we would have to address some of the properties that are bisecting two zones.
okay.
And kind of get those on into the business zone. I know that it probably happens with more than, it's not just one property, it's multiple properties that happens for. So we wouldn't be playing favoritism with any particularly like one or two properties. It would, we'd probably have to be across the board as far as getting all the ones that are in partial business zones completely into a business zone. If that's something we want to explore.
Can I answer that?
Mr. Bennett and then Mr. Kemp.
Yeah, well, currently we're using about 40 to 42% of our commercial business spaces. So, yeah, and maybe it is the location, so more options. I don't see any problem with expanding more options.
I agree, Tom. Mr. Kemp.
Yeah, I just, like, as a small business in town, on the Hanson Business Network, we've discussed the area, especially the Spring Street area, and I see that, you know, some businesses are struggling down there with the ability to do what they need to do. But at the same time, I worry that there's probably a reason why that was zoned the way it was and how it was done like that. So I would like to explore the ability to find out, and maybe go in the Wayback Machine to see why they would have created that zone in the way that they did, and if there was a valid reason for it. Because, you know, as you further expand those businesses on Spring Street, you're expanding them into residential areas where, you know, behind those, if you go through the woods, go for a walk, you'll come out into another development.
Right.
So, you know, I just worry that, you know, are we expanding it to the detriment of the residents that live in the area? So, you know, that being said, I'm definitely in favor of taking care of whatever businesses we have in town. So I think we should definitely explore that area for one. And there's several others, you know, like on the way to Pembroke on 27, that's a, you know, viable commercial area.
Right.
And if there's things we can do to encourage more businesses to go there, I'm in favor of that. And again, on Main Street, you know, the Economic Development Committee's been working hard trying to figure out ways to, you know, improve that area. And if there's things we can do in zoning, I say why not? So that's all I have to say.
Tony, would it take a lot to survey what Mr. Cohen's referring to as lots that need to expand and create an overlay so we can kind of see what that impact would look like? One of the things that we're surveying here is whether or not, you're asking whether or not to invest any further time to do, you know.
Right.
We don't
Like
want to go too far into the forest before we.
Right,
can
like
see
for
the trees,
instance,
but-
along Main Street, you have these three smaller, let's say, business zones. And you have some businesses that fall outside those business zones through the use of special permit
Right.
as an in-home business. You have a site that was the former VCA down on Main Street, and there was a building that could have probably housed, let's say, 3 small businesses if it was done right. But because of where it falls, other than it ever being a VCA, that's all it could ever be. So now it was sold and it's just a private residence and storage. So, you know, it's just looking at sites like that and saying, here's something that could have been better used as a business, but because it's actually outside the business zone, it can't be anything other than that type of business.
Mr. Cohen?
And another thing to remember is that there's different zoning requirements for a business lot versus a residential lot. So I understand that we could be, you know, where we need to protect the local residents as far as having a business on top. But if there's already a business, like the ones that you're speaking of on Spring Street, they're already there, they already fulfill some zoning requirements, I would guess. They're the proper lot size for a business, they're just not in a business zone, right? I think we do need to look into that further as well.
Yeah, would it take a lot of time to create an overlay to see what that impact would be?
No, I don't think it would take a lot of time. It's just, you know, if it will take some time, but not, you know, not a months on end. So I could put something together.
All right. Mr. Kevin?
Oh, I just, again, even with that side, I just want to reiterate that I think there's a residence next to it, to the left-hand side of it, as you're looking at the building. And then, again, in that area in general, although there are some commercial sites there, that was accepted by the ZBA, and if they wanted to expand into the business zone, couldn't they just go to the ZBA and go through the process? Because that would give the citizens the opportunity to object or approve, or, you know, because those residents that live around there, I think, should have some say, and I think the only way to do that is through maybe a ZBA hearing. Because if we zone it a specific way at this point, right, then we're stuck with it.
Right.
But we can also look at the H's too, when you see his overall plan. And anything that does stick up like that, then we can kind of
Absolutely,
evaluate
yeah.
it.
You know, I just want to reiterate, the citizens and taxpayers as well as the businesses, so, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, we kind of have a balance there, you know,
So we'll look at the properties that would be affected by a zoning change to take it, instead of being a split zoning, to take it into a full commercial, with respect to the fact of what Mr. Kevin's discussing about along Route 58, absolutely, and the impact of what that would be on any of that stretch. Yeah, I don't think shouldn't take too long for that.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not looking to just start a big swath of a business zone and come to residential. But when I look at Main Street in particular, and Main Street is such a focus,
Right.
maybe we should look at some of these business zones. And then when I look again at that VCA and talking with the ZBA, it's, well, it cannot be anything other than that, and knowing that, what a waste. That could have had a lot more potential. If there's ways to sort of help that and make it work, I think it's beneficial for Hanson and businesses that may want to, you know, come into town.
Right.
Or residents that may want to look for space in town. You know?
And we can look at options, because going back to Main Street, I live around there, and I've been complaining about that for years. So, more options.
Absolutely. So we have that as a runner on our agenda. So Tony, if we can keep that as a runner, we'll just keep that open and until we come to a finalized. But I don't think we're there yet. So I think maybe another 2 meetings or so to discuss that.
Yep.
Next up, we have at 7 p.m., we have a wonderful visit from Old Colony Planning Council. So from now until about 8:30 or so for our master planning workshop. And we have our newly appointed members here with us for the steering committee, which is great. Thank you for hanging around. And so we're going to move on to the presentation by Rihanna Dugan, I got it right,
Yeah,
Dugan,
yeah.
of the Old Colony Planning Council on scope, goals, and process of updating and approving the master plan. Discussions on the role of the master plan steering committee. Take it away. You want to come up front, or wherever you feel comfortable? Amongst the people is fine.
So Bill, if you're getting ready to get up and talk, we should at least be able to exchange email addresses.
Yeah, sure.
between all of us,
Yeah, yeah, that's no
because we
problem,
may
yeah.
have to coordinate
Yeah, yeah,
with each
yeah,
other.
no problem.
So,
With the newly appointed steering committee members, if you want to take a minute or two to write down your email address on the pages, and definitely with Mr. Cohen and Mr. Kemet, if you guys want to get together and write down cell phone numbers or your contacts, certainly do so while Rihanna takes a moment to get ready. We actually have pads of paper, so we'll get it for you.
Yeah. This is gonna save them.
I'm guessing 0 to 1 people will actually show up on the Zoom. Do you?
Yeah,
0 to 1, 0 to point 1.
0 to 1 person?
yeah, you have one at least.
Yeah. Do you mind recording it? And then, will it pick up my audio out here from your computer though? Probably not.
It'll pick up your audio, because your audio is being recorded by the ice
Okay, so
ball.
if you record it, instead of just posting the slides as a PDF, I can post it as a presentation to the site tomorrow. And that'll kind of help us fill our public participation gap for tonight. That way we don't have to, we can keep this ship sailing.
Which camera are you using, Tony?
And now it'd be this one.
Do we have somebody join?
It's not that. It's the recording part that it's not seeing it.
Say again?
The recording part, it's not seeing it.
Did you start the Zoom?
Yeah.
If you go down to your share screen, and then, okay, just click share screen for a second, the big in the middle. And then you can hover it right over to just the presentation if you want, or you can just have it set to screen too, whichever works for you. Perfect. And then top right, you should have an option to record.
Recording in progress.
Love it when people know how to use tech.
Don't do it enough.
As soon as you stop using it, you forget it. For every application there is. So I'll just take a second to introduce myself first. So I'm Rhiannon, I work with Old Colony Planning Council. We filled most of the room with our staff, so I'll let everybody popcorn around the room after. But Old Colony Planning Council is the regional planning agency that Hanson falls under. And we were contracted through the town planner and planning board to help put together the master plan, as it's a very large year-long task, and your board has lots going on with all our new state regulations and your ongoing projects. So we're happy to be here and help. This will be the first of 3 meetings that we'll do for public-wide participation. So this one, I'm going to go over how the process will work and the large amount of data that we've compiled to date. And then I have some larger prints of some maps and information we can take a look at after, and we can talk about any initial visioning ideas. We have lots of different board members here who serve different boards, and a couple of people from the public who have joined us. So we'll take a few minutes to do that, and then at that second meeting, we'll do some deep dive conversations about some of the projects we've addressed or other projects that will come up as we continue working with town staff and get more input from the town on how they think the best approach is to work through some more deeper context. And then that third meeting will be review and approval meeting from any town public that wants to join or participate. So in the background of all that, I'll have meetings with different committees and different town officials and the steering committee, which is now officially formed. We'll start having some meetings there, and we can go over some of the content together and some ideas. So I'll just let everybody who's OCPC staff, full or part-time, introduce themselves. Yeah.
Sure. Nick Giaquinto. I am the Senior Economic Development Planner over at OCPC, and looking forward to working with everyone on this. Jason DeRozier, temporary part-timer, working specifically on this master plan as well as East Bridgewater. I've lived in probably 3/4 of OPC, Old Colony Planning Council's region, so come with a wealth of knowledge of all the intricacies of the towns in which OCPC works.
Matt Dyer, great to see everyone again. Working with OCPC on a part-time basis.
Joanne Zigman, Old Colony Planning Council. I work alongside Rhiannon as senior planner, focusing on comprehensive planning and sustainability.
Lynn Napolitano, I'm part-time sustainability planner with OCPC.
So yeah, it's not just me. I'll be the lead contact and project manager, but I am fortunate to have a huge team behind me that are helping put all these things together. So with that, I think we can start flipping through slides. So yep, today we're just going to go through why we're doing this and what it's for. And we'll go through the data collection that we've collected so far in maps and talk about how that becomes your master plan. And then we'll take some time to talk about the highlights of being a Hanson resident. So just to get us started, the Massachusetts General Law states that such plan shall be a statement through text, maps, illustrations, or other forms of communication that is designed to provide a basis for decision-making regarding the long-term physical development of the municipality. The comprehensive plan shall be internally consistent in its policies, forecasts, and standards. Master plans usually last about 10 years, and just that chunk of general law to show that it really is something that all towns are working towards all the time, and that we're going to use it to outline the work that all the boards and committees do over the next 10 years. So OCPC's here as a collaborator with the town. We'll have these meetings and do a survey and other forms of public engagement to really get a sense of the community's wants. So our job is to listen to the community and understand their goals and priorities for the town. And just like we're doing today, we'll gather, analyze, and present information, and we'll make sure that the plan is significant to the town in response to the goals that the town is looking to achieve. So the state requires 9 elements. There's 10 listed here. Number 7, sustainability and climate change. We'll pull in your hazard mitigation or municipal vulnerability preparedness plans and any updates that should come with them. If you have those plans, they have to be included in your master plan as part of their requirements. So we use that chapter to just make sure that all that content is transferred from one plan to the other. But overall, it's a statement of goals and policy. Topic chapters are land use, housing, economic development, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, services and facilities, transportation and circulation, and the implementation process. For the town, the purpose of having a master plan is a guide for local public policy. It can help create or support bylaws, increase land preservation goals, create targeted economic development, prioritize areas to be conserved in the future, allocate funds for capital improvement, and advocate for needed services and capture the overall wants and needs of the community. And what type of information do we look at? Pretty much all of it. Here is a not exhaustive list of all of the categories of information we look at depending on towns. It includes looking at census data, reading all previous town reports and getting all the information out of them and seeing what has been done and what hasn't been done and how the town has changed, and working in compliance with the ever-changing state regulations that affect each town. But most importantly and most significantly for making it specific to the town is working to get the public input. So we'll do the public workshops and tabling events. The website is officially live, and I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. We use social media to help spread the message as well. And we allow public comment submissions, and we also have the master plan steering committee officially, so they'll help give input as members and residents of the town. So just where we are on the timeline, demographic research is completed, and we're doing our first public workshop. We'll do another one. It'll be winter by then. So in the winter, when we're doing a bulk of the writing, we'll also do that deep topic meeting, and then in the spring, we'll have public review. The contract closes in June, so we'll probably have that public review in May, so that way we can get any last minute, what did we miss comments, and go back and make sure that the town has time to bring it to town meeting if they choose to. So now I'm going to go over the data, all the data that's in these slides. I have printed in poster view, and I'll let everybody move around and we can more chat, less present afterwards. So I promise I won't read you every number, you won't want me to, but it will be available to you right after the presentation and ongoing. So for a quick look through demographics, the median age for the community right now is 42.8. And it significantly falls with a population between 18 to 64. The town's population has continued to increase. It was 10,639. I'm trying to remember which one. That was the 2010 census, and now we're in 2020 with our current number of 10,639. Of course, that was 2020 census, so we've probably seen a slight growth since. We have 3,920 households in Hanson, averaging 2.7 people per household. And just a quick overview, it came up in our earlier conversation during the planning board meeting about the subsidized housing inventory. Massachusetts requires that 10% of each town's housing stock be subsidized units. So when you add units, including that 10% helps you keep a balance. And as of this past year, SHI identified 229 total development units and 188 falling under the subsidized housing units, resulting in an SHI of 4.79. So we'll use this master plan to talk about creating a 10-year plan in conjunction with the other projects that are happening to make sure that the town is working towards hitting that 10%. So for education for the town, we look at enrollment numbers. I have just this year's up. We can also look at some of the trends for how it's changing, but they tend to fall with that population and age category shifts over time. Helps us understand how much capacity the schools might need in the future. So as we saw before, the town's population has been increasing over time. Educational attainment is very high for the town. It's a little bit higher than the state of Massachusetts at 94% high school graduation level or higher. And the town has a 34.8% bachelor degree or higher. So median income can be looked at through the census, and we use some other data formats to look at median household income because we have the variance between per capita and household. So per capita income was $51,071, and the median household income was $112,315 for the town as of the 2020 census. And the poverty line for the town was at 2.3%. Local economy. One of the things that we look at with the economy is how far do people travel for work, because it can let us know if there are local job opportunities, or how far out of the community do people have to travel for work. So average is 35.5 minutes, which is a little bit higher than the county and a little bit higher than the state, but not by a huge difference. The town does have some large employers. Shaw's Supermarket has the most employees in the town, followed by Hanson Appliance Repairmen, Hanson Middle School, and Webster One Source. And many, many other businesses. Those are just the highest employers. And also talked about earlier in the planning board meeting was the commercial and industrial tax levy. So we look at what percentage the residents pay towards the tax levy and what percentage the commercial, industrial, and personal property, how much they attribute and take that off of the residential burden. So the CIP level is 7%. This is a chart from the state police of how many car crashes have happened from 2020 to 2023. Majority of car accidents were property damage only, so nobody was injured at the scene. It's usually side swipes and more often just hitting mailboxes. But we can take a look at the next slide, which shows us a map of which areas these mostly fall under. So if you commute, you can probably think of a few spots in town that you drive by where you're most likely to see a car accident. Most people who do commute every day probably do see car accidents or drive through spots where they're regularly concerned about them in most communities. And also times where as a pedestrian, there might be streets or areas that could use improvements in terms of creating better visuals or better signage. And this will be a good opportunity during our second meeting to really have a bigger map of this, an expansion of it. We can really talk about what are those exact spots for the town. So this is a picture of your zoning and land use map side by side. So I like showing them side by side so you can see which areas are actually being used and how they kind of play off of each other. They are very similar in terms of where we actually see businesses and where we see industrial and where residential and open spaces are most seen. I have these printed out so we can take a look at them. I know that the view up there isn't the best for that. So this data is from Mass Audubon. This is from their Losing Ground report. This was published in 2020, but it looks at 2012 to 2017. They report 5 years at a time. And they go through lots of land use data and come up with calculations for how much development and permanent land conservation happens over time. And then they use those numbers to make a comparison of where they fall in terms of rank in the state. The Rankin State is not regulated by square footage, just as a heads up. Because that's the biggest question I get. So actually, can we go back to that last slide real quick? I just want to point out a few of the numbers. So to date, the total areas of development is 2,711 acres. And open space is on this one too. So total area of open space is 645. And then on the next slide, the permanent conservation land is 1,791 acres. One thing to note with that is specifically people on the Conservation Commission or who are working on parks projects might think that that number looks smaller. So permanent conservation is a very fine definition. So anything in Chapter 61, Chapter 61A or B won't fall under that because it doesn't necessarily guarantee that forever that conservation will be there. So the town's conservation rate is usually a bit higher than that number there.
Does that also encompass the wildlife management area, the barge area? Or is that against us because it's state owned?
It should be counted in that because they're not looking at ownership, they're looking at acres within the community.
Thank you.
Question? Are those numbers, those ranks, representing the percentage of conservation or industrial acreage against as a percentage of overall town acreage, or just ranking the state by total?
Written in state by total. Yeah, they're not normalized by how much space each town or community has. Biomap is a data set that's put out in conjunction with the state of Massachusetts and the Nature Conservancy, and a list of other environmental programs that help build them. But their last update was in 2022 and showed a new layer, which was local components, so areas of land that have local significance to habitat that you wouldn't see on a state scale, which allows us to see, especially when we're looking at business zones, overlays and expansions, or residential units that might be potentially coming in, like where are areas where we might actually want to have land for conservation or open space protection because of certain migration patterns or other wildlife habitat. And I have these ones printed out too for us to look at. So what happens with all of this information and every individual number that we didn't read off is we use it as information to inform the goals that we're going to use. There is a community profile that's been completed that Tony has that has all this data synthesized together. That'll serve more as an appendix for the master plan, so that way we can pull what we need from it to explain why the goals as we create them have significance or have importance, but really we'll pair that with the engagement that happens over the next a little less than a year so we can get it finalized and meld all that together to create the goals that the town wants to see. So ways to stay engaged, we'll have the survey very shortly, hopefully early next week, public, and we'll work with the steering committee now on how we can best spread that through the public so that way everybody gets a chance to see it. The website was live last week and I have information on that for tonight too. And over time, coming to these meetings or just in general, you can always email Tony or myself comments on the plan or the process as we go along. So that is the master plan webpage link, and I will also share it with anybody who shares their email tonight. That way they can take a chance to look at it. But you can go to oldcountyplanning.org and put in the search bar Hanson Master Plan, and that'll also bring you to the webpage. And that is my contact information and Tony's contact information. And for the presentation, that is it. Does anybody have any questions regarding all of that?
I do, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
On the demographic side of this thing, did you include the community preservation plan? Because we have a plan that talked about demographics. And I just wanted, I'll be brief, I just wanted to talk about some of the stuff that was in that. And, you know, just off the cuff at this moment, we found that median income in Hanson was $90,000 a year, right? And that actually had a profound effect on the way that our finances with the school district go. So it's of concern to me that, you know, those demographics put us in sometimes in an awkward position, first of all. But second of all, when you talk about, you know, community and affordable housing, that number is kind of high. So, and most people in the area, you know, in Brockton and surrounding area, don't make anywhere near that amount of money. So when you're looking at how does the calculation go for, like, what's considered affordable in Hanson is probably going to be different than what would be in Brockton. And, you know, so we go back and forth with that. So I just wondered if you could touch on that a little bit.
Sure. So for SHI specifically, the subsidized housing inventory, it has to follow the state's guidelines, which they have to the public, and I can have that information on the website as well. It does follow a certain percentage, and if your unit, even if it is affordable compared to what the average income for your town is, if it doesn't meet those regulations, it won't count towards that. In terms of creating a diverse housing stock though, right, we can look at options for how do you create more affordable housing, just in general, for the overall income that you have for your community, and what does out of budget versus in budget versus, we have, I myself graduated college and was definitely not able to buy a house right away, like pretty much everybody in the past 2 at least generations in the future. So how do we create those housing options so they can move back to the town that they were raised in or live close by? I think all of that comes from kind of how the public wants to do it, because a lot of that will fall to zoning opportunities, and I know that your work with the CPC is looking to identify affordable housing that meets SHI, and also looking at other housing projects that meet housing goals for the town. So I think it depends a lot on what direction the town itself wants to take.
When we were developing the Hanson housing plan, HP, Judy Barrett gave us a lot of help. Housing production plan, thank you. She gave us a lot of help in regards to that. And I'm not sure if you got a copy of that. One of the bigger messages that we had received out of that process was about, if we could find the Campanellis and build another Campanelli village like they have in Whitman or a few others, that would be great, but I don't think they're around any longer. So one of the things was about not only bringing in the attractiveness of that small family neighborhood, but retaining those that are here. One of the most problematic things that we seem to hear quite often, and it's a real, is the senior population that's getting squeezed. And so creatively, with things like the ADU, the new ADU, accessory dwelling unit bylaws and zoning laws changes and stuff like that, we're hoping to be able to encapsulate some of that, to not have to see that senior population, leave us. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to integrate a lot of that outreach and knowledge from the public in this as well, to be able to kind of that's the bookends of Hanson. We have a great bookend senior, and we'd like to see more of the first family buying homes. That would be great if we could be able to do that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've worked in housing, specifically affordable housing, within Boston for the last 10 years, and Boston's its own thing with affordable housing. But I think there's an important distinction between affordable housing and housing affordability, which are different. People always within Boston are constantly talking about affordable housing, but it sort of then begs the question: affordable to who? Because there's subsidized housing and income restricted housing, which is somewhat different from each other, and then there's like workforce and missing middle housing, and housing so that seniors can downsize because they might be overhoused, and housing for families, and sort of like of all different. So it's about diversity of overall housing for the supply-demand side of the market, as well as providing housing at an affordable level, income-restricted housing, so that you can meet your sort of overall housing.
Sure. Great, that's a great clarification. Mr. Kevin?
I just wanted to add to what he's saying. Like, I'll give you just a brief example. Now, I'm 63 years old, right? I have maybe 4 or 5 more years where I'm going to plan on retiring, right? And I'd like to be, but my kids will not be able to buy the house that I own, or even come close to it. So I can't, pass my legacy down to my children because they can't afford to pay for it. So, that's really a big problem, I think, in this town, because, I can see the age of the population going up and up, and all these young people are moving, they can't move there. They have to move to Whitman or Brockton or to a city somewhere where there's more places that they can afford. So how do we immortalize that in the master plan?
Yeah, I dragged my wife from Southie, where she was born and raised, down to Whitman when we were ready to buy. We lived in Dorchester for 10 years. But
there's a bunch of you that live in Whitman.
Yeah, I'm meeting a couple of them. But I mean, I think you're right, and it's unfortunately like a state problem. It's not like exclusively to Hanson or to Whitman or Halifax or whoever, but requires sort of like creativity in order to ADUs, and I'm somewhat pleased to hear that ADUs is picking up maybe some steam or traction in Hanson, because people in Boston, like that's something in Boston that we're sort of like looking at, but need to sort of bring those tools to more of the suburban.
It's been approved, so
Okay.
it's adopted, it's signed, so it's there. And I actually think that Pembroke's joining up with us next, because that's coming on their flavor of the day, agenda. So absolutely, it's a for anybody listening that hears these recordings, it's a massive undertaking, this master planning committee. So thank you for everybody's efforts, because it's not only just the housing issue. We have our wetlands, we have our conservation, concerns about overdevelopment. Where does the town lose its image? All those things that are in place. Yes, we might see a population increase, but with the population increase, is it bringing students? So now the schools have to look at that and assess it. So this is a major overhaul for what we want to see for the next 10 years. And for the public that are listening, please, in the future, we're going to be outreach, needing outreach and everybody's input. So that's a great, but this is where it starts. So I'd also like to see if there's any possibility, not to dwell and spend any major time on it, but 10 years ago, or coming out of just the last master plan a few years back, some of us came onto the planning board. I actually wouldn't mind doing a retro look back, a brief retro look back to see 10 years ago, was there anything significant from the last master plan that just completely failed, and don't waste your time on that, or was there progression? I think that with the last master plan, there were some things that had big eye, small stomach, and they just never came to fruition. And I'm hoping that we wouldn't have the same. I think one of our bigger areas, obviously, is the blight of Main Street. And I think that we have a real opportunity, especially now with some commercial space going up for sale down there. So it'd be nice to be able to focus on that.
Can I just add? So one of the things that I always listen, I go to a lot of meetings, and people talk about all kinds of stuff, but it's not often that anybody dusts off the master plan, or the open space plan. And I know, like in CPC, we have a CPC plan that's similar to the master plan in some ways, but not in others. But we find that when the plan was put together, the master plan, for example, is 12 years old. So most of those people have either retired or moved on, or some of them may still be around, but oftentimes they actually haven't read the document. So more important than the plan itself is how do we engage the community in reading the plan and like living with it? Because down the road, like our CPC plan is 2010, right? And that whole board has changed since then, other than myself. I'm the only one that has any, remembers that plan and what it was for. So, the update period is kind of long, I think. It's 12 years? So, a lot of things change in 12 years. So how do we make that maybe a living document? That would be my thought.
So I can speak to that on a few different things. One big part of the master plan when we created this time would be having an action plan that has very laid out steps, so that way you can track the progress you're making towards these goals. Because some goals will be low-hanging fruit, there'll be things that the town probably already had lined up that we just want to include, so that way we can document the progress as it happened. And other things might end up being longer plans that require steps over time. So we'll try to pair those with the board or staff that would be best assigned to in terms of who you would see taking over that project, so that way even if Tony isn't the town planner anymore in 5 years, the next town planner is able to look at the master plan and have that list of tabulated projects of what did the goal say, what did the town say they wanted to achieve for goals over the next 10 years. And we'll also pair that with funding sources, because that's one of the big holdups for most towns and their plans, is if you don't know where to get your funding sources from, it just stalls everything. So that's in terms of getting things accomplished. In terms of getting people to read it, many towns, though it's not mandated by the state, bring it to town meeting. I don't know if you guys have decided that or not, but it might be worth having a conversation about. Bringing it to town meeting is a great way to just have the town acknowledge that there's this new set of actions that have been created through public engagement, and getting them to swear it into the town also allows them to acknowledge that it's something that they should hold boards and committees and their own votes to meeting those goals. In terms of all the other plans, I think it does get overwhelming for residents and for towns how many different plans there are now. I think the nice thing about an updated master plan is that it should grasp all of those plans. So all of the previous plans will go through all of those action items. I think looking over the previous master plan as a larger committee would be a great idea. Maybe we can set it up with Tony moving into the new year. I know you're already booked that December, so maybe we can look towards the new year once we've all survived the holiday season and going through as maybe a joint meeting, what did get accomplished and what didn't since the last one. Because some of the things that didn't, it's usually a workaround. Something else happened. That's not how the economy went or population or this or that. But we can take time to do that and we'll look at,
Pandemic hit.
or that whole pandemic thing that kind of threw some things off for people. We met with Phil about the open space plan, and he's also going to go through his objectives and goals that he had because that plan's almost at the end of its life, so we can include anything that's left over from that into this plan and any new ideas. But it's a challenge for towns, and I know Dartmouth, I previously worked for the regional planning agency under OCPC, and Dartmouth was finishing up their master plan, and they were talking about creating either a subcommittee or maybe at interdepartmental meetings, having just like a check-in. Because there's so many plans and there's so many goals, and how do you keep track of all of that? So like, can you check in once a month during interdepartmental meetings to talk about which order do we want to tackle things in or which actions are taking priority?
I find there's too many. Well, I agree with John. I find there's too many plans. Municipal vulnerability plan, open space recreation plan, master plan, strategic plan, and I think they should all be under one umbrella.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize that there's 5 different plans. And 5 different plans seem to have 5 different outlooks. And they should all, to me, fall under the master plan.
If not, at least funnel to the master plan.
Yeah, because, and unfortunately, they all have different shelf dates. And then you have to, you have to renew them, and then you have to find funding to renew them.
Yeah.
And I just feel like master plan should be the umbrella, and all of those other plans should fall in there, or at least be a section of it. So at least the goals of what those other plans were trying to achieve.
Right.
So you have an open space and recreation plan, you say, okay, here's the 10 goals of this plan, that should be incorporated to the master plan, so at least you know where to go. Well, what did they want to do on the open space? Here it is. I find there's just too many plans, and it winds up being too many reports, and they wind up sitting in a corner, and they collect dust, and they wind up being a lot of money spent. And just as a taxpayer, anytime I would see on the news, a municipality, they're going to spend X amount of dollars on a report, and I'm like, that's a big waste of money. They're just going to go into a corner somewhere and just collect dust. And I've found probably 5 different reports just in my own office and go, what was this for? And how much did you spend on it?
Well, the only positive thing I think about that though is each one of those different plans speaks to a different demographic though. Like there's a lot of people who feel that the open space plan is important because they feel like open space is important, whereas other parts of the plan, they have no concern at all. So, I like the idea of combining it all, but I think those different demographics still need a voice somehow.
Oh, I think they need a voice, but I think you need to at least feed into it. So at least, like if you have your open space and recreation plan, like I said, if you have 10 goals, here's what our 10 goals of this open space recreation plan were.
Yeah.
And make it part of the master plan, even if it's just 2 pages. We have an open space and recreation plan. Here's the goals that we'd like to achieve, so that everyone knows, because you find the different reports and you go, oh, and some of them overlap and some have different ideas.
Because I know like the CPC, right, hasn't been around as long as the master plan, right? So I'm very excited to see how CPC and the master plan are going to interact with each other, because I think it's important because it's a major funding source for a lot of the ideas that people have. So, that's just one thing I'd like to see how that evolves.
Do we also know the dates, the due dates for the surrounding 5 towns master plans?
I can send that to you.
So one of the things that would also be, I would think the same thing is funneling into the Hanson master plan is, it would be nice to make sure that, we're, parallel with the surrounding towns, because what they're doing significantly impacts our town.
Sure.
With all their, the Route 18, the proposed potential Route 18 expansion down into East Bridgewater, that it might be in East Bridgewater, it's gonna have an effect on Hanson, so it would be nice to also follow up and find out, let alone, the hub of the South Shore, knowing, a little bit more what, what's going on in Brockton. The impact, the significance of the redevelopment down in downtown Brockton is gonna be huge for Hanson. Someday they might ask for a trolley back from Hanson through Whitman to East Brookton, who knows? But it would be a good point to try to encompass that as well.
East Bridgewater is also updating their master plan right now, and they're almost on the exact same timeline, and they're
Perfect.
also contracted under us.
Okay.
So we can also take, I'm happy to try to coordinate a meeting and have a joint meeting, as they're maybe a few weeks behind, so we'll give them time to get to where this is at now. And then in terms of public engagement and getting their steering committee lined up, and then we can, we can have foster those conversations of how
Just be able to
these
have a
plans.
slide representation, like, it's not only Hanson, it's our surrounding community, this is what's happening.
So Joe, I like the way where you're going with that, because if you think about it, right, like, is there a regional master plan? And, I've never
Joanne?
seen one. And I think,
There are multiples at various different levels. So the probably the most consolidated and most sort of well-done regional planning is at the transportation level. So there's a lot done through our agency, through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the Joint Transportation Committee that will help hold that aspect of planning together across the region. There are no regional plans related to land conservation or sustainability unless you kind of look at a watershed level. So there is like a plan for the Taunton River watershed, a plan for other watersheds in the region. Housing and some of these other issues that master planning touches on. There is a regional policy plan that OCPC did, probably it was before my time, so probably 5 or 6 years ago or so, that tried to kind of lay things out, but it's not really an active document, if you will, and I don't believe it's going to be updated. Bill, can you think of any others?
Just on the state level, we have,
Right, regional planning is pretty weak in Massachusetts in general. It's usually state level and
Yeah.
local level.
'cause,
Apart from transportation, there's a lot that happens at the regional level.
A lot of that's being told from the state level too.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's a mistake, because, if you're gonna redevelop areas of Brockton, right, people from Pembroke and Hanson and other surrounding areas are gonna end up driving through Hanson to get to Brockton to their job, and that's gonna have an effect on this community as well as others.
We
So,
do have what we call the SEDS committee, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the region,
Mhm.
which looks at that. It operates on a 5-year plan. So right now, we're actually at a crucial point for when you guys are doing this. In 2025, that's when we're going to be, the report is going to be due for another 5-year blueprint. So that process is probably going to start early in 2024, looking at talking to communities and having conversations about, things like housing and transportation, how workforce development, how all those pieces come together for things that are, for the region, things that are going on in Brockton, and what's going on with TOD and those 3 commuter rail stops in the city, and how it's impacting Whitman and that sort of thing. So we do have that, and we're kind of revamping things on that committee for 2024, but that process is going to start up again. So there will be a 5-year working document that will be started on next year.
well, could we put some of that stuff, as it may relate to Hanson, into our master plan? Because later on, Brockton is gonna have a profound effect on this community, as well as Whitman is growing, all the surrounding towns. So I think it's important for people in Hanson to realize that their master plan is affected by other things.
The expansion of transportation from Brockton down to River?
Mhm.
Am I right with that?
South
Oh,
Coast
New
Rail.
Bedford, New Bedford? What?
The South Coast
Yeah,
Rail.
that's all good, I mean, that's gonna be huge.
Is that still going through Hockomock Swamp?
They're gonna pick up pump wedgies on the way.
There you go.
It's gonna split. It's gonna split, I think, in Freetown. I think if it splits in Freetown, it goes to Fall River. And then New Bedford has been doing for years, infrastructure.
Sure.
To, politicians would go down every 4 years and go, we're bringing you the train, vote for me. They'd vote for them and still be waiting for the train.
Yeah. I'd also like, as we're going through this, I would also like to see if we have an opportunity to have a page for our local representation, to have maybe a comment or two from them. Put in their projections, what they're planning to do. It'd be nice to be able to engage with them. They're also gonna be able to give us that 10,000 foot overview of what's happening in the area, so it'd be nice if we could spend a little bit of time to reach out to our local representation for comment. I'm pretty sure that the Fed folks probably don't have a clue what Hanson is, but that's all right. Sometimes it's quiet and needs to stay that way.
So I'd like to pivot a little bit. I can pull out the posters that we have printed. We can all move around a bit and then we can do some, I feel like we've already started brainstorming, but maybe I can catch up on jotting that down while people look at
Sorry.
posters. And then we can do a little bit more brainstorming just to wrap it up.
Sure.
And yeah, okay. So I'm gonna use this table to lay out the posters when everybody can come move around and stretch so we don't all fall asleep as 8 o'clock is approaching. Posters up here. So these are just larger prints of the data, and then can I use?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Stay
Please
inside,
do.
and we don't all have to crowd around the same.
Hey, Tony, do you guys want to hang on to that?
You guys.
Contact information.
I should have Kim needs a copy of that.
Any place for it.
I'm just giving the whole thing to Tony.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
So you guys are all really familiar with this one, she's probably slightly different colors. Yeah, so if everybody wants to come up and just take a look at some of the maps blown up and printed, and then I can set up a board and we can just do a quick comment session of some of the information.
Can we ask questions?
What?
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, of course you can ask questions.
No.
Just, a 24 to 48 hour email.
No, yeah. Yeah, there's a whole corridor right here. Yeah. It is. Yeah, we can find that out.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, 'cause you can see all the properties here. Right there, right there, right there. Yeah. Yep, yep.
Where would you just?
Yeah.
Right here. Oh, no, actually, this one is right here. Damien's, this is in front of Charlotte. Right? And then maybe right there?
Those counts of accidents?
Yeah.
Yeah, voices.
Jenkins.
I wasn't going coming up 58.
My wife took a while to learn about sort of like the South Shore, like roll and stop.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not stopping, I'm like, they'll stop. And then they,
All the actions.
He's,
I know we did that thing where we were looking at priority areas.
I was thinking.
Yeah, so that's already kind of happening in some ways, right?
Well, this is happening in Keene specifically, but we have
Complete streets, I think they did
Conservation
some of
Commission
that
likes
excavation.
streets that are sort of like.
I know for that in the
Housing rich, but
They
like
did.
rural.
They did.
So,
Yeah,
they own their
I
homes,
know,
but they don't have.
remember you telling us
so they don't pop up
there were
on
like
the
5 or 6 priority places where we wanted to
like a week before the world shut
attempt
down.
to get money from the state.
That's what I said, the same
Yeah.
weekend.
So I think
That was
we
driven
kind
on
of
the
thought
match
that
of like six.
immortalized
So
in the
we've been working
master
in Boston,
plan.
a number of
So
them.
that's our hope.
It would be interesting to see sort of like how food access and sort of like food justice sort of enact. Yeah, a lot to do. Particularly because there's shots, but other than that, are there any like, is that the grocery questions everywhere?
There's some smaller stores.
I just started here.
Yeah.
So depending on where you
Makes
live
too
in the
much
community,
noise.
if you're within sort of like outside of a mile of the grocery store, then you consider it.
Just
For
for
that,
people's ideas.
some folks like annually.
It is a bracelet, right?
I'm Mark, I went back, I went to,
The.
like the end of Fourth Street, right across the
So in my office, I have.
Yeah, it was same time period, I think it was March 6th, 2020, right before the shutdown, a week before the
I
shutdown.
think I have 8 different colors every time there's a new aspect of it.
But yeah, I was taking care of those around down for within.
So-
Six, 7 years.
So soothing that
Yeah, the morning, I wanted to get out. Benefits,
way.
and then I have, but benefits from sort of like the recommendation. We started all that, new development downtown.
Especially where they.
Ramping up the police
To try and get
department.
what's called the
Yeah, like $180 million.
I have some of this, I just,
Yeah,
I have to make myself like a new task.
but naturally.
I try to use the digital.
Let me go keep some copies of that. Just give it out, to everybody.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Are you on?
I was.
Yes, she doesn't get off West Street, she drives. Drive right in.
One for each of them. Each one for this, and then one for us.
I did it on weekends.
And you wait 2 weeks and then all of a sudden there's
And all the tasks change. We always say we're gonna get better at it.
It's a good, that's a good drive.
Lots of daunting.
Whereabouts?
Fairwood over, factory.
Yeah. Recently.
So you do that.
Oh, great, yeah, no, I'm right down there.
I'm an electrician.
Oh, you're in that,
I drove around town, trying to learn more about how, where things are.
That's great. It wasn't great. It was inside, so they may not be like these hot water cars there. In terms of like,
Is that a neighborhood or?
So it's
so sort of highlight. You know, I talked to you the
There are train tracks, right?
Yeah.
I walked through there. Bunch of height.
Yeah.
working on the South State. He
Yeah,
loved it.
I've been spending a lot of
It's
time.
funny, 'cause I was first out here, working in a building, Fed, financial district, you know, and I'd be in my office, I was like 12 stories up, and I'm like, wait, like across, I'd be like a half a mile away, it's so. Very much. Yeah.
Same time.
That's a good side.
Crazy, you know, there's no
Facility.
Even like midday,
Yeah.
certain days, it's pretty cancer. I went on like a Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, or Friday, and there's like no one going.
Yeah, so this one.
working, I only went in like twice a week.
And you start talking more.
An hour long trail. Yeah, right. You're like a little pod. You got your own music. Everything you need.
So there was part of that. That's a cool. There was a
And I read the whole around.
You know, you get that.
It's like you're like on both sides. When I do the ED,
so some people were excited about that.
ED was so graphic coverage. You guys, you know, like post-COVID.
It's gonna get torn down, you know what I mean? And then
Like I go through there all the time. Like I you'll text go get it. I don't really get
So to get torn down.
That's kind of exciting. Whenever we start the conversation, and it'd be great to talk to them. We know what you have. Yeah, exactly. We know what you have. So if I run these, I have we have 3 problems here. No systems and gas station like house. Money for that.
You know what I mean? If someone has 3 kids and you know, almost like these big printing
I remember it was
20 or 30 million.
I remember past that.
So, so come in, you know what I mean? And do their application and get rocking and rolling for that. And hopefully, you know, down the line, we'll get whole distance, you know? So there's another lot that's actually really interesting.
That had to happen us.
Probably right at the
Right, we got 10 million on the state mass work grant for that. And then like halfway through, it's we need money. And they almost blew, like, I remember Lieutenant Governor calling me, the mayor's house, like,
I think it was owned by somebody.
they were having conversations. There used to be an old gas station that came out. So he would call me. And Karen would call me. What is going on down there? And I'm like, listen, chaos. Because there isn't any, like, there's a tornado. But that's, yeah, it's like, I guess walls go up, this is pretty cool.
So that's the old police county.
It's only, I can only imagine how
County hospitals, take it down, many years to try to figure out how we're gonna get it. There is they have to plan in place, and now we have to find so I know that
And part of the reason why I wanted to come back here is for that's why it's that's why I always stop. I remember drive out of somewhere.
I am trying to think outside the box and install stuff.
My wife's from I thought it was a big switch. But anyway, when I was in Asphalt, I really had to manage the program that managed 13 different people that work on the ground, each of them gets 13 of the 26 people. So I was like,
they have these like, kind of fix you there. And
I'll tell you, not the worst. In my opinion, polio is the
you want to try out different
I don't know, we can go a little back and forth.
a little bit better, but you can try out pay off some money to rent it.
But,
I don't know if we'll get to that one. But, oh, yeah, so that's another big topic. I thought we'd like to get to that. We do
wild man. Yeah, people were like threatening us. We had a party. We had someone try to blow up our car. You seen that? Don't put Tostitos, John's, he made a trip over to Cape Verde. We had a whole agenda full of stuff that we were supposed to do, but one of the things we were trying to do while we were over there was have this kid extra. We knew he was good for so we were going to try to extradite him. And the kid's brother found out about this. They did something, they did a meeting. And then they lit up the song. I remember getting the call, and like I stayed, it was like a Parks and Rec episode. Like stayed, he called me Cape Verde, not leaving my house, surveillance
as soon as she started tearing some up,
I lived there in the same suit 48 hours. My poor wife, with your hand, that's the first weekend she did my project. Was that weekend.
Makes sense if you're trying to join them.
and that was every.
You know, like, that's helpful, you know, they might have.
I don't think that's the one. You're gonna get enough people that way.
You know, it's a tough situation. So,
You related to,
yeah, all the other places, there's a lot more residential. Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing more people like cut out of those areas. Every time I drive by, I'm like, so that's Italy. I was going to say, they got to go on the left side of the street. So you'll hear music from like well, the problem with Foxtown is so Foxtown, we had some land
And that's, so actually, we're going to regional plan.
the reason why most of the time, so as far as I know, so as far as I know, Hanson, well, I should say the public property is really in reading. For whatever reason, I don't really know why.
Is that boiling again? Is that?
I've heard it brought up, and so Tony proposed the
practice rooms, you guys know.
And then the window half rolled down.
And so
Hey, he's upstairs.
highway department is right now.
She was like, hey, I'm gonna see my friend.
It's
It's a guy who used to work for never shipping him to the right in the area. He liked
yeah. But then you have, you get it. So, actually, it's in the triangle. So it'd be right over here. So anyway, so Tony proposed the plan to see if it was fly, and of course, the first. See, ship, tell us if you Springfield, they probably moved across the street to where, but anyway, the orange fields up there, expand highway department like that. Good thing we had is highway department, right? 4 miles this way, all around here, we do that. I don't even know, I've run into the water department before, and I've seen some people. Yeah.
They're sitting on the property that
Might go to conversation, might be so which ones might be developed. There's one right next to the if we looked into that, so we have one because
So then, yeah, that's great. So once you get there.
So,
Administrator,
oh, as far as, yes, I guess it vary, is that what you mean, if we sold the water share, I don't know if that would fly, but that's a sensitive subject.
Yeah, that's about as much fun as, you know, bringing out parks out.
Yeah.
Yeah. These guys,
They like the
So what I see as
find out where the problem is.
Yeah, you know, so,
Do you know what day it is?
so it's great that we're looking at Friday.
Okay.
Possibly experience the business or just looking at the business that we have now. We actually buy only at 100%. In areas that might have affordable housing. Okay, I think I've heard a couple of them.
It started going out.
So basically the lot sizes, Yep. So that's the benefit. So as you know, yeah, exactly. So I think there was talk about that elevator so the
Oh, great.
I guess okay. Is that affordable housing? I guess it would fall under that. But I mean, I guess it was, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. Right now, and then it's like a police.
We should make sure.
You know, we can get rid of the playing field, you know what I mean? I would, originally, we were talking about putting it down, it's not gonna happen. One generation, you know, I went to a lot of things
Yes, yeah.
Hasn't confirmed yet, I think they might be learning from it, especially if we can build it for that. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully
It's not the final draft. I feel like it's too much.
we don't want to be the right to find like that. And that's.
And then you use the
How much for the yeah, so we'll say a Hanover issue, but it's a Hanson right there.
But
The thing is, you're gonna go on this like.
Tony, do you want to do the stick note activity as well?
All these different
Or do you want to refrain?
And, one of the things is,
So we're asking folks to, as a wrap-up, to write down the issues that they want, what they want to see achieved in the next 10 years, or something they don't want.
I'm not a resident.
I know. So I think, yeah, I think it's okay. Usually we say whoever lives or works or owns property.
Yeah, I see.
Sure.
No, I just, it's supposed to be anonymous, so I'm like watching you.
you're gonna, I feel bad for
Like,
you in a way.
other people have sandwich cover. I'm gonna go home and scan them for fingerprints and
One.
Thank
How many
you.
items do you want?
As many as you want.
Okay.
Can you explain to me again?
Yes. So we are looking for one idea per piece of paper, what you think is most important for Hanson to achieve in the next 10 years, or something that's an important issue for you, or perhaps something that you don't want to see happen. Basically anything that relates to kind of goals over the next 10 years.
It is, yeah. I drove my newest condo the other day. And it has $400 in HOA fees every month, in addition to the rates of $50,000. It's fine, it's fine. I'm gonna have less when I retire.
We got so. I wanna buy a house. I'm gonna have to look like self-employed. And she's like, what's self-employed? Yeah, so this is, maybe some town, Joe talks about. I live in something out there where, not you know, it's also expensive. You know, like, Bridgewater, Abington, and Rockland. We ended up finding a replacement equipment.
Protecting the rights, and then we also have.
But we have a old ladies house there and never been touched, like after like 1980. So I had to do a lot of work to get it moving ready.
You know,
And you know we have other meetings coming up, so you don't have to write the whole CPC agenda, but just as a resident, a few
I
goals.
mean, I think pretty much everyone that's lived in Hanson has.
It's just
something that
centralized
they
where
didn't
ideas
want to be approved, right? But the growth of the Hanson's gonna happen.
So to wrap up, what we're asking folks to do is take a sticky pad and note, write what you think Hanson should. Any important issues.
And you guys can cheat too, but if you steal somebody else's
So
stuff, you just say
basically,
something
anything
bad.
that's related.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking to see.
You can use as many as you want.
Anybody already
Stick
just
them on
take
that
it all the way out?
Oh, my God, it's done.
Yeah, the Route 18 expansion though.
Temporarily going to like
maintain
maintain,
add,
behind
behind that,
and
Walgreens.
like these what we're
And
looking
Wendy's
for.
are there.
Yeah, be as specific
and
as generally
yeah,
you want, if you're simple as
I'm
a
tired, I had to walk
to,
from East Bridgewater after I got my car, when I got back, there's no sidewalks on that end of Route 18. They should install.
and they're not.
I dropped my wife's car off at Ferry's one day. She was out of town. She was like, "Oh, we'll pick you up." I'm like, I walked home. It's a mile.
Excuse me, Paul?
And like when we met, I looked at Georgia, so I would. I walked almost to where the.
That's unheard of.
But again, no sidewalks, it's not particularly wide.
No, but I have no straight line. It's like living in the city, like you walk places, like people don't really give you a second. I feel like if I'm walking in Whittle, like I feel like people are looking at pedestrian differently than so,
Even the other morning, I pulled out my driveway, somebody walking down the street.
I
never see it. You might see people out walking the dog, riding the bike, but like, you don't see people walking as a means of transportation. Probably because that looks close to each other.
yeah, but
Trying on the computer.
not
Yeah, but you know, when you think
I
about
stopped.
sidewalks, if you go from, say,
So I'll
reach out to you. Okay, sure. Facilitate that. It's a hearing.
So I live on County Road, so, right, that's small sliver, also the Hanson Speedway, but if you are around after school and afford the kids, it's one of those last names where like I see it on top of places, but as far as I know, I'm not really there. County Road, up Harvard Street.
Bus.
So I think we're gonna build sidewalks every mile of town.
Put down, better paid employees, public employees. I got you guys, don't you worry. And you know that's coming from my heart now that I'm not in office. You know
As
that.
far as I know. All the.
More trees.
I put that down, yeah. Yeah, open space.
Stuff like that, so that's a good thing for it, because, who knows that that's a problem.
I mean, the state paid for sidewalks all along.
Gee, Joe, you're gonna make them work, aren't you?
I am.
Well, actually, that's one of those things.
He's coming up with a goal.
That's what I tell you.
I know.
I was trying to get my attention and I was able to say.
It's what you're gonna have to trust in all the
Tony, good to see you, my friend. I'm the guy who's like flooding your inbox every day with a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I just started like a little bit over a month ago. But I was over at Mass Job and working with Mayor Carter and Brock for 7 or 6. So. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, you're looking for more committee folks.
Yeah, I think we're all set. I mean, I think we worked it all out. You know, I want to kind of start things fresh in 24. You know what I mean? For feds, I think we're gonna have a good start to that. And then, yeah, I was just talking about that $500 million for that like brownfield stuff we got going on. Just telling me about old 1057 Main. The Cranberry Building.
That's a private property.
Yeah.
I just,
The guy who put it on the market.
yeah, it's outside the sun. If there was
I would say likely, but like yeah, so it's gonna be cool. See what we can do. We're gonna procure that. Probably by the end of the month, we'll have someone come in and work with you guys, folks on like doing the brownfields is as cool as it can. But the downtown is so cool. I grew up in
Last year,
private sector.
And also like it's an area
Go by me.
Yeah. Well, I always take, I love doing the side roads to rock. I take my motorcycle and I'm right in. That's what I do.
Yeah, I remember Lakeside Terrace.
It's not a bad road.
It makes you I grew here for a while.
Who's this doing?
and all publicized all the
Thank you.
That's what drives the exercise.
Because that was where
So that developer, they located around here, they did
Yeah, he did,
the bank thing.
God, what's it doing?
He doesn't you had a similar
Yeah.
experience.
Something that sticks around here too.
Yeah.
Just stormwater, or like management. Stormwater management and the probably overwhelming presence of stormwater, large amounts of stormwater.
Yeah.
Well, climate change is soon to deliver.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good dude to have in this neck of the woods.
I couldn't write all of it, but I'm saying,
What's the guy's name? The developer. Stevie. Where's he around here?
Yeah.
Do you think that you should be
Oh, yeah?
today? Do you think you need the drainage committee to do that? I feel like if the town has an MVH, pretty sure you guys have an MVH.
Yeah, it's fine. We
right?
had,
Yeah, and
a lot of
it
these have to do with like developer business, putting up all like new marketing rating on like some business product.
Yeah, so I'm saying
I
like
got
once you
Joffrey
compile,
and every time I go to a mayor's house.
like we were talking about going through all those files and compiling all those action
All the
items, probably really reassign it in a way that maybe moves it forward.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes
Yeah,
getting
so,
more committed. It's just,
yeah,
it depends on the
gotta get started. So when we came in there, they had
because if it's something in your MVP that just the planning board can work with on their own, Tony over those two, we do an MVP grant application after
but yeah, we had a lot going on. And then a lot of it's continuing, but a lot of it's going backwards.
just went straight through the woods with aliens and all this. I've gone no.
We're just like,
I don't
all the
think
emails, you get to an email account.
No, they were trying to do one with the sea. Oh, yeah. You'd have to build through the wetlands to get to me, I don't know. The seaport did something, but I don't know if they've gotten that was the answer.
They want to connect with the seaport substation. And this whole, in order to like, you know, get traffic, but then this whole like, too slow, like, not so slow. Restrictions like traffic. And then, you know, the rich and the, so like, one of the levers, everybody in there, you know, drive. Yeah, that's a very good
It's
point.
that time of night, for sure.
That's a very good
Sure,
point.
I'm ready for coffee, but I don't have
I can fall asleep with a coffee.
I just came out of my puppy's next
Yeah.
to my best, that way if I overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in my grad program, writing the zoning
Plus it,
overlay.
and in a community like this,
Part of this overlay, when you deal with contractors, you know, plus contractors who are just looking, they're doing it a small project, like a bigger project, but it's like, yeah. That's awesome, that makes
That was
sense.
beautiful.
That makes sense. They adopted the zoning plan, so.
All right, everyone want to take their seats, so Rhiannon can have some closing statements, and we can finish up
Yeah, let's grab lunch from there.
our presentation and workshop.
You guys did a great job filling the goals board, we plenty of.
I got quiet.
you gotta get your feel good.
It did.
The Holy Liquid.
That's for you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for staying up extra late tonight, staying out to do this, and we'll keep working with the steering committee and the planning board and other town committees and staff members to keep this moving along between now and the next meeting. My contact information is up on the board, as is Tony's. Those of you who are already in contact with Tony, if you didn't write mine down, Tony and I talk weekly, so he can pass anything along my way. In the meanwhile, do check out the website if you have time. I will, or maybe wait a few days, I'll put all this up on it tomorrow, and then Wednesday, it'll look even better for you guys. So, but the website will be a really great spot. I'll keep updating it with when things are happening. And please share with your neighbors and friends and your families that live with you in town to stay engaged. And thank you again. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any final questions or comments? Thank you very much for your time, appreciate it. I appreciate the dedication of everybody at OCPC. Thank you very much for our 2 volunteers coming forward tonight and applying. This is wonderful work that we're going to be doing, as well as our delegate from Conservation. Appreciate everybody's time. It truly does take a village to make things happen, and I really think that this time moving forward, it's one of the better parts of being up on this board, to be able to sit side by side with these board members and our town planner office, which now is growing some good roots in the ground. We're very good to see that. So that comment about if Tony's going to be here in 5 years, he'll be here in 5 years. So thank you very much for all attending. Absolutely look forward to looking at everybody, working with everybody in the future, and seeing the progress this makes. Thank you for coming.